wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no high dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. As Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ambane Snuche Dujong Aidu Dojen Rubabo Lama Ivo Yenzi Nezong Andro Zola Yazelo Chandara Zamaraya Me Te Ata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha Baba Gonjo Zonji Gai Demi Doji Je Badaji Me Badaji Shewa Daji Ragi Baji Me Tumbe Chodanji Je Dingo Yeso Nere Nonya Je Jo Je Wada Me Do No Be Je Nan Je Wada No Ma Jun Ji Mon Zon Zon Ya Ji Ya Ji Ya Ne Na De Le Yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Edam Guru Radha Mandala Gam Niradayami. Jadan Jadi Janam La Shanju Badu Dani Yazuji Dagi Chinye Jibe Zunam Jin Rala Benji Zanye Yuvashu Jadan Jadi Janam La Shanju Badu Dani Yazuji Dagi Chinye Jibe Zunam Jin Rala Benji Zanye Yuvashu Jadan Jadi Janam La Janju Badu Dani Yazuji Dagi Chinye Jibe Zunam Jin Rala Benji Zanye Yuvashu.
Odanga Lari Chibo Dunduma Lari Chiburua. Tatane Tachibu Chungo Tumola, the Malay Marve. Chibu Chungo Tumola, the Sambajan, the Samba Chivice, Tela Ludu Seva. Samajan, the Lajideshima, Jibada, Jideshima, the third Mani, Jideshima, the third Battle Chandu, the Lady Nane, and also Lady Marve, Lady Roa. Lende Katule there, Lende de la Niba Delita Deletaji, Tevaji, Valasmo, Lende Shambada, Sheda to Sambasane, Yodu Shatu Sungunane, Lende Shambadje, Tela Leg, Ebi to Shizanzunga, Sushet Samba, Hajita, Tamo de la War,
Lelanju.
Lelan Jutu Dematanroa, Ledan Debut Demaji Marva, Debut Dematala Nabi Lende, Kabi Lende, Legenda Jendema Sunroa, Sungunan, Tasumba Led Marva.
So, again, we are looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. And we're particularly in the section that is called Training the Mind in the Stage of the Path Shared in Common with Beings of Small Capacity. So when we look at the outline of that specific section, we find under that major heading of Training the Mind in the Stage of the Path Shared in Common with Beings of Small Capacity, three categories. First, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity. Second, the attitude, the measure of the attitude of a person of small capacity. And then the third category, dispelling any misconceptions related to a person of small capacity. So the first category, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, we find two major headings. First, developing the state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and then a second category of relying on a means or a method for achieving happiness in one's next life. So under that category of relying on a means or relying on a method for achieving happiness in one's next life, we find that there are two major headings. So we have first, refuge, and then a second category of karma and its results. So we're currently dealing with the section on karma and its results. And then when we break that section down, we have three major categories. So first, reflecting on karma and its results in general. Then second, reflecting on karma and its results specifically or with its particulars. And then a third category of how one abandons non-virtue and engages in virtue. after reflecting on karma and its results generally and particularly or specifically. So when we get to the first category, we have the first category of reflecting on karma and its effects in general. We have two points that are made. First, the actual way to reflect on karma and its effects in general, and then reflecting on the distinctions among the varieties of karma. So that's we're moving as we move through the outline. If we look at that second heading, reflecting on the distinctions among the varieties of karma, we'll find that there are two major headings under that. We have first the principal teaching on the 10 paths of action, and then after that, we have the determination of the effects of actions. So we've gone through the principal teaching on the 10 paths of actions. So then when we get into the determination of the effects of actions section, there are three major categories. First, black actions and their results. Second, white actions and their results. And then a third category of other classifications of karma. So that's where a presentation of other classifications of karma. So that's the section that we're currently in. And I'll let you know the page number exactly once Rinpoche leads in. Diksan.
Oh yeah, tanga zo de somba leji rado yo gente bas odene ba somba da nabi lende gabi lende leji yo gente bas songa na nabi lende saje gabi lende saje da somba leji yo gente bas odene no 사지도 갈래 사지도 뭔가나 갈래 코템을 해는 그래서 근데 갈래 까마도 좀 야부요 와르스 어제와도 som바와도 레딘서
Less so in the section we're currently dealing with, the major heading is the determination of the effects of action. So this is the major heading that we're under. And then we find the categories that we've already gone through. So we first find the category of black actions and its results. And then the next category, white actions and their results. So we've gone through those two. And then we have the third category of the other classifications, a presentation of other classifications of karma. So this begins on page 239 in the English, if you turn there. And we're on, I believe, 185 in the Tibetan. So 239 in the English, where it begins that section on other classifications of karma. Okay.
Oh, that no what the tanga zo what the that chulus and ramana mara you should know the sugita ane kasore de kanto zugon jiden kanto zugalo ane gajo zuvares shiba zuvares alag zuvares odlago marba ta namasan jeba jena what the leg shivares leg marba ane maso le yesu le de la ne gi le da me gi le yaga ji da du ga ni waris le yaga de ge me je de la je kan ku la du ji waris le du ga de ge le yesu ge ne le du ga de ge ni wa ye da tu nu son de tu yo waris o de ji de marba ya
Less so. Many religious traditions explain the creation of things by a creator God. So if we look at Christianity and other religious traditions that posit that, we find that things are created. When we look at all the realms that exist, those of form and so forth, we state that the other religious traditions state that these things were created, these realms were created by a God. So a God such as God in Christianity, or Allah, or Shiva. So we find these varying explanations of how these things are created. But in the Buddhist tradition, we find that these actual realms, these existences, are created by karma. Karma is action. So we engage in action through our body, speech, and mind. So we engage in virtuous actions through our body, speech, and mind. We engage in non-virtuous actions through our body, speech, and mind. The virtuous actions that we engage in are the better actions that we engage in, which are the virtuous actions, give rise to rebirths and existences such as the human realm, the desire realm gods, the two upper realms, form and formless realm experiences. The negative actions that we engage in, or the non-virtuous actions that we engage in, create the lower realms of suffering, the lower realms of the hell, hungry ghost, and animal. So this is how we as Buddhists explain how the various forms are created. When I say forms, the existences in the realm, like an existence as a human, existence as a form being, existence as a desire realm god. Buddhism states these existences are created by karma. So we find then in the great master Nagarjuna's precious garland, where it says, from non-virtuous actions come all sufferings, and likewise all the miserable realms, and from virtue come all the happy realms and the joys of existence. So we find this quote from the precious garland, and what this is, Master Nagarjuna is stating that the higher realms of existence, the happy realms, the human's desire realm, the form and formless realm existences, these are all created by virtuous action, and the lower realms of suffering, of the hell-hungry ghost and animal, are created by non-virtuous actions. So we find this that point validated by Master Nagarjuna in the Precious Garland.
Medebe dongen was medebe dongen chi dongen gai dongen nai dongen chi dongen momdua what sugalo gog de mares gog bene mele chi barede mele ya ode chega naji dongen to sugalo gog de mare ona kari de versna ode magi de veres magi duba je gores doji magores Then also mel jetadu mel dewandoa. So that rojela temi dewa mamdoa. Dewa to so ngalo gawal den jomare zoje ge zobares. Zoje ge zobares. Ngaso matabote jeje ge jeba yende me imbeshir. Dunu imbeshir. Ne zoje dela gawat magwani ga yoares. Ni kata yoaresna an ngaso mel debi dewa dan Less
so. So, in looking at karma and the specifics, we find that at this current moment, we are human beings. We have a human basis. So we necessarily had, when we look at the two classifications of karma, throwing karma and completing karma, or projecting karma and completing karma, we necessarily had virtuous throwing karma, because we're human beings, because we were born in the upper realms of cyclic existence, in the higher realms. So we say that definitely our throwing karma is virtuous, because that is how one acquires upper realm rebirth. Then we look at the varying degrees or varying experiences that we have in this existence. We have wanted happiness, and then we have unwanted suffering. So we have both of these experiences. It's not fixed one way or another. So we say that the completing karma is mixed because of this. So because of the varying experiences, the mixed experiences, there are varying completing karmas, or mixed completing karmas. So when we have the various sufferings that we have to experience, unwanted suffering, such as the suffering of birth, the suffering of aging, the suffering of sickness, the suffering of death, all of these experiences that are unwanted experiences, that are experiences of suffering, are necessarily caused by non-virtuous activities we've engaged in through our body, speech, and mind previously. The experiences which are different than that, those happy experiences, the experience that we want to have, so for instance, the happy feelings that we have related to form, or to tastes, or to tactile sensations, or to scents, zudra, are sounds, hearing sounds. So these happy experiences that we have related to these things are a result of virtuous activities that we previously engaged in. So we see we have these varying experiences within the existence. So the existence itself, which is a human realm, has a positive or a virtuous projecting karma, but the varying experiences within that, the suffering and then the happiness, are caused by concordant previous actions. And these are the completing karma. So we say that there isn't certainty there as to the experience, because it's a mix, because there's a variety of potential. So, Jigsaw.
야 통토 말에 에다 통토 타송다지 말베 다든지 돈도든 아주 통토도 아주 미도하게 돈도를 되는 아주 체단시면도 아주 통도 쉬우다 what 아주 통도 what 체단 쉬우다도 그걸로 페이지 맥이 배배인데 돈도 힘배지 나서 힘배지 다 고수 줄래 돈을 째사도 안 고수 되비 대완도 medebe dongen was chedan tosul dewa doa what sugna chi dewa te ane magi revision digo mar te gwagen reveres ge do ba sheveres anu kozul dongen doa dongen de magi do ba sheveres chetabde magawale che barete ane kuchi sadu kolun debi dewa da medebe dongen de ngalo dewa de ge do ba shevere dongen de magi do ba sheveres what ji san dan she sa zon ga da.
So when we speak of the lower realms of cyclic existence, we're speaking of the hell realm, the hungry ghost, and the animal realm. But when we think of these things, because we can't see them, doubts may arise. We have doubt. So when we look at these three categories, if we just move to the animal realm, this is a realm which we can see. So this is something that we confirm exists by seeing. So we can analyze that specific realm in the following way. So when we look at the animal, shu gare, bird.
Shu but okay.
So we can see the animal realm. So there's no doubt about that existence. So when we look at dogs, cats, or birds, these are examples of animals. So we can say that because these beings are born in a lower realm, they necessarily have a non-virtuous or a negative throwing karma. So we say that this is what propelled them into their existence. Why? Because they are in the lower realms of cyclic existence, therefore there must be a negative propelling or negative throwing karma. But then, within that existence, there are varying experiences. So we can't say that there is fixed virtuous or non-virtuous completing karma because of the various experiences that these animals have. For instance, a dog has times that it's happy, or he or she's happy. or feels good. This is not caused by non-virtue. So we see that it's something different that is causing this experience, and this is caused by a previous virtuous action. And then in the case of a dog, we also find times when the dog suffers, when it has an unwanted state of suffering. And this was not caused by virtuous action. This was caused by a previous non-virtuous action. So we see when it comes to the completing factors, there's various karmas that are taking place because of the various experiences. Those happy experiences being caused by virtue, those unhappy experiences being caused by non-virtue. So previous virtue, previous non-virtue. Dixon.
다 벤주 질레도 어떤 가서 지친사르데 다리 로지 지지지지지하나 안는 그 인지 돌로잖아 고수 건드려 벤주 지예와네 dundu pembilene gawata ngandu pembilene magawayila jojila ngeba mete dundu ya yala ombo masawa ta do ba setonwa ta ne mo ta yuwala suba ne megi shelas megi zuba jebares dundu ta yeda la penju fason suba dundu shubu yuwares lo yima lo ane yeda shubu yuwares yeda zutrichita what to look na shubu yobate ane koso magi pembarete ane shubu penju fason subate ge zuwa jebares tujine ge jeto teta na penje ge pembala zoje jang ge subata ane magi zuba ni ta penje magi pembala zoje magi subata ge zuba te meje wos what about to inchi no koso kontra
Lesson.
yeah.
So we're going to read beginning on page 239. So it says the major heading is a presentation of other classifications of karma, and then we're in the first category, the distinction between projecting and completing karma. Although the karma that projects a rebirth into a happy realm is virtuous, and the karma that projects a rebirth into a miserable realm is non-virtuous, there is no such certainty with regard to completing karma. Non-virtuous actions create even in the happy realm such effects as not having complete limbs, fingers, or sensory organs, and having an unpleasant color, a short lifespan, many illnesses, and poverty. Further, virtuous actions create consummate wealth even for animals and hungry ghosts. So here we have again an example of beings such as animals or hungry ghosts who have a non-virtuous throwing karma. But in this case, it's making the example of those beings who are in the lower realm that are wealthy. So we find in many cases that Nagas are quite wealthy, are rich, and then other hungry ghosts are actually quite rich from materially. So even though they have a non-virtuous throwing karma, we find in those cases, in those examples, where there is a virtuous completing karma because of the enjoyments that they have and the experiences that they have. So it's just giving another example. It says, this being the case, there are four sides to the relationship between being projected and being completed. Among lives that are the result of virtuous projecting karma, there are both results from virtuous completing karma and from non-virtuous completing karma. I'm just going to stop there because Rinpoche just read a little bit.
This one. That ne zoji magawa da ji momushe de khon ka ba yosna lobe papa to me kundu son yo ba.
Okay, that's more logo.
Yeah, okay.
Among lives that are I'm going to read the rest of it. Among lives that are the result of non-virtuous I'm just going to start here. Among lives that are the result of virtuous projecting karma, there are both results from virtuous completing karma and from non-virtuous completing karma. Among lives that are the result of non-virtuous projecting karma, there are both results from non-virtuous completing karma and from virtuous completing karma. And now we're going to get into a quote from a Sangha's compendium of knowledge. And Dikson. So where do we find this explanation of throwing karma and completing karma? We find it presented in a Sangha's compendium of knowledge. So in Jayan Sheba's text, where we find a category which is called the explanation of the throwing, explanation of throwing, something like that, explanation of the throwing, pentu gitsu, explanation of the throwing, we find this Asanga under that head, Asanga's quote under that heading, under the main explanation. It might be of throwing and completing. Maybe it's abbreviated. I'd have to see the text, but it's just basically the tsul is the explanation. So the explanation of, and then we find Asanga cited.
Gandu Jawa Pemba dance, Gay, Delu Jawa Pembare, and Magi, and then Gandu Jawa Pembares. Most of Zuba Shep, Les Riba Shaws, Zuji de la Gawata Magoniga Yuares, Penji Gi Pembala, Zuji Gawata Magoniga Yuare, Penji Magi Pembalaya, Zuji Gawata Magoniga Yuars. Les Riba Shaws, what they get, and then Penji don't Zuji, Sebus Muar, they haven't get you now. And what they got to pencil the Abangazaro. Pemba ne, Gagi Naba Meba Pemba was. Pemba said, Natu Matabi Naba Meba Pemba. Name Pombo Penji, Natu Name Pombo the Gay Pemba either, Natu Main Beige Pembas. You also Zuba Jebane, Gangi, Jebana, Meljitadu, Jebana, and the Mejitadu Malaya, the bit the Wada, Meduba, Nuanduas. Depuis the water gate over Shibare, Medubi doing it, and the Magi over Shibares, Tundula at the Jibar. What about the water?
So now we'll read the quote from a Sangha's compendium of knowledge. And if you understand the content of this quote, then you understand the points that are made about projecting and completing actions. So understand that virtuous and non-virtuous actions project and bring to completion birth in the happy realms and the miserable realms. Projecting karma projects a fruition. Completing karma is that by which in a rebirth you experience the wanted and unwanted. So here, when we look at this, a virtuous projecting karma creates the happy realms of cyclic existence. A non-virtuous projecting karma creates the miserable realms of cyclic existence. A virtuous completing karma creates that which is wanted, and a non-virtuous completing karma creates that which is unwanted. So when we look at the basis of this human existence, this is a virtuous throwing karma that we have because we have a human basis. Then when we look at the experiences that we have, those wanted experiences are caused by virtuous completing karma, and those unwanted experiences that we have are caused by non-virtuous completing karma. Diksun. So it's important in English that we look at this and ascertain the meaning, and then once we are able to read this and understand what it means, then we understand what the information being presented here really means. By understanding what this quote means, we understand what the information that's being presented here means.
다 펜주기요 다 듣는 예바들 대용거다 다제 나바제는 저월 도마메 바래 저 도마메 반다 디바도 나추기레 몸사야요 데빌레 몸사야요 사샤베 네바데 바차든 나추 내디요레스 나추 줄요레스 안네 속에 저와데 네레도 속에 어레 저와 집행거래 레지기 저와지 배그를 도마 배그를 어떨 해온다 레지기 저와 지 배스게데 저빌로레 바수바노 네 레지게 저도 배워서 근데 근두기로 파바토메
Lesso.
파바토메도 어디 때문이다래
Lesso.
레지게 저지 배워래
Lesso.
네 레모모게 저지 배워 어떤 시야 시다마일로 소리 시다마이 조다들 아바래 tempo 마레스
Lesso.
네 근두디 시다게 그래서
Lesso.
어들레 대사래
Chulongo, then Galo.
오른줄레스
Lesso.
줄레 지기 저지 배노 네 용주시바 도마이 실레지기 저지 펜지 도마메 펜라 조지라 도마여바다 도메장 지메 펜바 셰도스 저빌로제 군줄레네 레지기 레지 펜비 레장유 레지기 레지 펜바 요아레 레지기 레 도마 펜비 레장유 레라레 레지 펜비 네 레도메 레지 펜바 요아 레 모모기 저지 펜바 요아레스 레도메 레도마 펜바 펜비 레저 요도 셰송데사 레발레 레지 게지마 지기 세지 군이 남에 소화셔봐사 세지 고데 레바디 임바레 레지 세지 군이 남에서 통주주주 레다보 지코나 소화셔바드네 요아레스 레데 서로 남이 안에 서로 도미 남에 소화셔봐스 다저 뭐 편지 이러와 레게지마 뭐부 지부 드니지 사변 소화당사 뭐부 나변수 뜨네 서로 지네 지도 주비 사변야 소화시도사 다가서 레 뭐게 저지 뱀바요래 레 지도마 뱀바요 그들 뭐요
Lesso.
가정어서 대시도 말বে 맞죠 주변일 되는 세지와레스 아니 그니 초봉바도 받고 타마즈 초타마지로 오늘 세들로네 gần 분네 대인데벌라데네 저원 서로 상제도 그니 조제부용어레스 어때 레지되게 저모 배도 되는 거 다만에 근로지게 네 잡아서 보셔는 카톤 잡아서 배반하면서 많이 하면 배배배 로드만 어떻게 저게 비박이 좋아가지고 말레스 레지 어떻게 뭐 요송 거서
Lesso.
뭐 인지도 진로는 거기서 나잖아.
The treasury of knowledge explains that a single action projects a single rebirth and does not project many rebirths. There are many completing actions, but many projecting actions do not project a single body. So here, this is according to Basu Bandhu's Treasury of Knowledge, and this is actually a presentation giving according to the Vaibhashika school, the Great Exposition School. So their way of explaining is quite coarse. So we find a more thorough, a more stable explanation given by Lord Asanga in the Compendium of Knowledge. So then we find quotes from that to follow next. So it says, so this is what it says in the Treasury of Knowledge. One projects one rebirth. Those that bring about completion are many. So here the assertion is that one action, one karma, projects one rebirth. So it doesn't project a multitude of rebirths or any of the other variables. It's just one karma creates one rebirth. So this is according to the Vaibhashika school. So here, Sangha states in the Compendium of Knowledge, there is karma where a single action projects one body. There is karma where a single action projects many bodies. There is karma where many actions project a single body. There is karma where many actions project many bodies. So then it says, so there are these varying possibilities. So there is a karma that could create one body, a karma that could create many bodies, multiple karmas that create a single body, and then multiple karmas that create many bodies. So there's all of these varying possibilities. And then it goes on to say, the commentary explains the Sangha's 4 types of karma respectively as a single instance instant of an action nourishing a seed of only a single lifetime's fruition. That action nourishing a seed of many lifetimes' fruitions, many instants of an action again and again nourishing a seed for just a single body, and many mutually dependent actions repeatedly nourishing seeds for the many bodies of a succession of lifetimes. So we find the example that we previously went over, where the poor couple made an offering of a gold piece and some very clean water in a pot or in a chalice or some sort of offering vessel. And as a result of that virtuous action, they offered this to the spiritual community, to the Sangha. And as a result of this virtuous action, all of their lifetimes they were born with beautiful bodies. In all of their future lifetimes they were born in the higher realms with beautiful bodies. So we can see how this one action has projected many different births. And then in the case of non-virtue, we find the example of a person who was in the monastery and was they call him the biba, the gomchen, kon gomchen yin.
Gomchen se ta kan de ko
drapa yin.
Drapa ni yiro, drapa ni drapa se bajan no.
Okay.
Bajan no ko anju sa yiro ta. Drapa tu ma ni yiro tu ba lo biba na do lo yiro. Ano te ngag di ba chiro. So
we have the story that in the monastery where there were monks that were reciting texts. There was another monk there who found this was annoyed by the sound of the recitation. So he went to where they were reciting these texts and started to call them names and said that you don't sound like you're saying anything holy, you sound like frogs. So he called them this negative name. He called the other monks, said that they sounded like frogs. And then as a result of this one negative action, it stated that he was born with 500 times as a frog. So we see in the case of non-virtue how one action can create a multitude of experiences in the case of that example. Diksun.
Ta penzu ji wa de le ji ge jo to ma pe wa zo de chi cha ne ta nge ma nge le mo nge ma nge bi le da ma nge bi le sa sa du ne de bi nyu wa nge ba da ma nge bi le o ka do le o mar be ta shi do ta ne nyu wa nge ba da ma nge bi le ne ta nge ba da ma nge ba de le ti ko de de do ta shi sa ju ko ne shi ba da Jibi guna sontu yawas, ngabi leda mangabi lezade, shebi leda sabi les. Odin mata ji yungduwa, sheba da sabi chaba ji shegares. Tuju guna sontu yawas, ngabi leda mangabi lezade, tuju guna tongchu nyunjugile, jene nyunjugile, leda jena jubi le sontuwa dindi le yungduwa.
Like the Jewa de Jewa Shema.
What the not she there, the Catholic water. That on the she says, Le Sheba, Sabi Sheba, Sheba the Sabi Sheba, what the days is a moment water. The Tomaje, near but the Tujuku and Son to Yoa, Tonju Nyunjo, Jene Nyunjo, London Jela Nyunjo, what the Son to Yungre. That number she said you go net raw. Tomba she said you go ne what the Tomba she said you go ne.
So we're on page 240, and we're the karma. So we're on page 240. So we've gone through this section. Just one thing I forgot. So since beginningless time, we've engaged in these actions, and we have within our continuum these actions that have left imprints, and then it's these imprints of these actions that arise into these experiences that we're speaking of. So Rinpoche just mentioned, since beginningless time, we've been accumulating these things that create these experiences. So the beginningless time thing I forgot to translate. So now we're in the section on karma, whose result you will definitely or only possibly experience. So, and then within this section, we find various points that are made. First, we go over the karma that is done and then karma that is accumulated. So we find these two categories, karma, the action that is done, and then action that is accumulated. And then we get into the three categories of karma which will ripen in this lifetime, karma which will ripen into the immediate next lifetime, and then karma which gives rise to results in many lifetimes later. So we'll get into those points also. So now we're a karma whose result you will definitely or only possibly experience. Okay.
What ne shesa cheba and teni meji sheba lama la jusus jang ji saji te don te khon de de sen de jendo si je manba cher sheba she sheba do sai ngwa ji de sai ngwa ji le nyuang bi le ne sa ji de sheba da sa ba kan yin ba wos wo de nyuang bi le tres nyuang jo ma bi le ne sa ji do Majila, Sanjido, Sanjid Shela Masabakan Bos, Sanjid Shela Masabakan, but Mangabileres, she son batar, what the Shishiba, Nebile, the Mangabile, Chersheba, Dudujin, Sombares,
okay, what the giant
Nebile, Mangabile, Dudujin, Chershebas, Dudujin, Sombares, Chershebas.
So then, Jayan Sheba breaks this section down into four categories. I'm going to do the best I can with this outline at this point. But the first is the summary. So the first category is called summary, and that's where we find the quote from the levels of yogic deeds. So the summary of karma that you will definitely or only possibly experience section. So here, so definitely or uncertain would probably be the best way. Certainly or uncertain. Nyepa ma nyepa. So we find first this quote from the Levels of Yogic Deeds by Master Asanga. It says, karma whose result you will definitely experience is that consciously done and accumulated. Karmas whose result you are not certain to experience, which is uncertain, the experience is uncertain, is that consciously done but not accumulated. So these are this is the summary section according to Jayan Sheba. Digsum.
Ta nyuanju ngebi lenes sanjin de sheba dans sanjin de sheba sana pana su ju gu sanne shela sabagan baos su ju gu sanne su ju ane su ju ya de juri musantan juri musantan wa de saba ya de juri musantan ba koma gu san juri musantan ba ina ma de saba yin tenu koma gu ba ina sanjin de jiro ane luyin ja juri mu luyin ja de ba juri mu santan ba ina o de saba se o tin saba na jin luyin ja ba o de se go sare nyuan ju ngebi le ne sanjin de shela saba kan yin ba o pana su ju gu san ne ane su ju gu san juri mu santan ne ane su ju ba jiro le jile su ju ba de ngebi le les shadan ma je na dreben ju nge ba dreben yong das su ju gu san ne san jin do ane su ju ane juri mu su ju gu san ne ane san jin do su ju ba ina o de ngebi le de dreben nge ba yong das ma ji ba le gu da lui ma be lui se ta ane su ju ba ma ji ba le ba ro ta koma gu san juri mu san ta no koma gu ba ina de ngebi le da tin dreben nge ba yong das ane lui je gu san juri mu san ta ne ane lui je ba ina de ngebi le das dreben nge ba yong res le ju le son che ta nga gi jit de ma ju tene jun she gu san juri mu san ta ne ane jun she ba ina wa de ju ma de ngebi le res jun rembo jun she gu san ta ane jun she ba ina de jun de ngebileres. Jun chama marbe. Chama she gosan jun musanda, and chama she bayina, or the ngebileres, and the Chizu marbe, Chizu. Chizu she gosan jun musanda, and Sudan bayina, Hasho marbe, or the ngebileres, and the Nachi then double injury. What does it?
This Sanchin du Jela Masapa, the Ni Yimba, Chik Yimba.
Sanchin du Jela, Sanchin du Jela Masapa son du Kakarota. Sanchin du Suju, Suju, Juni Masan Matabaina, what the Mangabiles. Could Juni Masuju was on Dama. Suju,
less so.
Suju. And Juni Masana Matabaina, what the Mangabiles, never
less so.
What did
Seldu.
What does
So the level of yogic deed says karma whose result you will definitely experience is that consciously done and accumulated. Karma whose results you are not certain to experience is that consciously done but not accumulated. So here, so what is meant by the certain to experience? So when we look at the non-virtuous deeds, so we look at killing, for instance, consciously done means that one has premeditation, one is thinking about it, and then executing the task. So in this case, it's killing. So one is thinking about it, has prior to the event is thinking. Rinpoche said, Jurumbo, thinking about it for a long time. And then executes the task. At that point, it's a karma that is accumulated that one will definitely experience. So that's in the example of killing. Then we look at the next, stealing. So when one thinks about stealing something for a long time, or has this premeditation relating to the stealing, and then actually steals, at that point, it's an accumulated karma that one is certain to experience. Then we look at the next, sexual misconduct. If one thinks about sexual misconduct for a period of time, and then engages in the sexual misconduct, this is an accumulated karma of sexual misconduct that one whose result you will definitely experience. So the certainty of the result. Then we get on to so those are the three non-virtues of the body. When we look at non-virtues of the speech, we have lying, for instance. So if one thinks about lying for a period of time, for a long period of time, and then actually tells an untruth, lies, at that point there is accumulation, and then this is a karma whose result you will definitely experience. And then the next, we have divisive speech. The same, thinking about divisive speech for a long time, and then actually engaging in speech which divides, a divisive type of speech. If one does that, then we have this premeditation, we have this consciously done aspect that qualifies it, that makes it a karma that is accumulated, and therefore karma whose result you will definitely experience. Then we move on to the next, harsh words. If one thinks about engaging in harsh words for a long time, and then says something, then executes the task by saying something bad, saying something terrible, then this becomes a karma that's accumulated, and it's a karma whose result you will definitely experience. And then this applies, Rinpoche stopped there and said, then this applies also to the other non-virtues as well, the gossip, and then the other three non-virtues of the mind, covetousness, harmful intent, and wrong view. So we would apply the same way of thinking to those others, and to understand how it becomes a karma you will definitely experience. Nyepa, ma nyepa lamas.
Nyuanjo mangebile nesro. Nyuanjo mangebile sanji de shela masaba kan yimbo. Sanji de shela masaba kan yimbo sedule. Sanji de suju ane komaku loyinje ane juni mo sanu mataba ina masaba marba. Juni mo suju gu san juni mo sanu mataba che 수제바 상진 수제바 이나 데 망해빌레레스 데부 요마 용해바 요마레스 상진 수제 주르마 살다바 이나 안는 데부든 해바도 용해빌레레스 안네 상진 수제 주르마 산노 마타바 이나 데 망해빌레레스 상진 고마구 주르마 고마구 산노 마타바 이나 데 와데 망해빌레레스 안네 로인제 주님을 로인제고 산다메나 안네 망해빌레레스 어때 송 주난 제나 그 지금 답 말베다
Inchike then the Sampa you yene sapa yomare.
알레도 올 셰사 올 말레도 알렌데 카투도 뇨안조아 망해빌레네 상지도 셰라스 워든도데 아 상지도 셰라스 동도 상지도 수주제 주 차마 치투 나치셰 주는 산노 마타바이나 마사빌레스 네 워드 망해빌레스
Okay.
네 저건도다
So
사용어제
Sayanguje. Chishina the junior.
어때 안된데 진짜 제자인데 누구 그래
They Sanjin du Jela.
요한조 망해빌레는 상진도 셰라자 상진도 제송도 상진도 수주 주는 산도 마다바이나 망해빌레레 데부 요마용 해봐 요마레스 아니 로이다 나게 제도 강가 집어 말
Okay. So then this karma whose result you are not certain to experience is that not consciously done but not accumulated. I got to look at this, but Rinpoche is saying if you do not engage in this premeditation, this thinking about the task before one engages in it, if there isn't this premeditation, then it becomes a karma that one is not certain to experience. So there's uncertainty there. It doesn't mean that one won't, but it's saying that there is uncertainty there related to the experience. So if this premeditation isn't there, then it isn't necessarily something that one will experience. So that's what the meaning of this is. We'll get into it further. So we'll take a short break, and we'll get right back to this after. I'm just going to take a look at this. The giant Sheba Nipa?
Sheba sabi lani chibu kurundu what she Janji Shesa Chaba Zilare.
Okay.
Sheba sabi Chaba.
Okay.
Sheba second the Jilagare, Saba second the Jilagares, what the head marba. Tashi Sagi Chaba the Nile, Sayungojua, Sayungoji the Niles, Shebi Lake Angenas, Shesa Nigan on the Shebi Lake Shena, Sanjindo. Sanjin Sane Samba Sane Chang Lunga Gunha was Shebi led the Samba Sane Ludanga Gunha was on the Tapaji Luigi Leda Nalil Jajan Vision Dizamarbe Shebi led Suju Samba Sane Sujuba Majiba Leva de Jurva and what the Magojuroda Suju Sane, Suju Samba, Sane Lejugun Sujiba, Majiba Lemba, Loyi, Sonje, the Shibileres. That Jum Hagus Sane, Jun Shibaina, the Jun Shibileres, Jun Tama. Tamashe Gusane, Tamashe Baina, Tamashe Bileres. Titu Marbe, Titu Magusane, Titu Mabaina, Titu Ma Shibileres. Jun Tama Titu, and the Nachi Marbe, Nachi Shegusane, Nachi Shebaina, Nachi Shebilero. shebile so da lule dang ali mi chao se jan bejin rab mu a
Lule dang ale.
le je le son ro da su ju gu san ba san ne le ga gu ne la ba son tu su ju gu san ba san ne su ju ba le je le ma ba ta ma ji ba le gu san ne san ba san ne ma ji ba le ba ina ma ji ba le be le ro ten lo yin she gu san ne san ba san ne lo yin she ba ina wo de le je le son de ma ba
JB.
she son ji te nga gu ne ju ta ma se su nga ji ma ba ju nga gu ne ju ta ma se su je nga ji je ma gu san ne an ten ju ma je yong ro
Less so.
what did she be legit what did you jana
The same text sets forth distinction between having done karma and having accumulated karma. So in Jamyang Sheba's text, this is the second category, the distinction between karma you have done and accumulated karma. So here it says, what is karma that you have done? An action that you have thought about or that you have consciously set in motion, either physically or vocally. So here, this consciously means that you're actively doing it. You're not unconscious. It's something that you're actively doing. So within that word consciously, it just means that it doesn't have within it this premeditation per se. It can be within it, but just as a note, this consciously means that you're just doing it. You're consciously doing it. I don't know how to say it in any other way, but I just want to make it clear that it's not loaded into that. So an action that you've done or thought about, or that you have consciously set in motion. So here, when we look at the varying actions, we look at the three non-virtues of the body. So if we think about killing and then do it, then we've created a karma that we have done, which is killing. If we think about stealing and then we do it, we've created a karma which has been done, which is stealing karma. And then the same holds true for sexual misconduct. If we think about the sexual misconduct and then do it, then we have engaged in a sexual misconduct that has been a karma that has been done, which is a karma that has been done. And then the same holds true for the four non-virtues of the speech. Lying, divisive speech, harmful, harsh words, and gossip. When we think about lying and then do it, or we think about divisive speech and then do it, or we think about harsh words and then do it, or we think about gossip and then we do it, then this is called the karma that we have done, and then in this case through our speech, the four non-virtues of our speech. So here it says, an action that you have thought about or that you have consciously set in motion, either physically or vocally. So here we're speaking of the actions of the body and actions of the speech when we're looking at this category of something that we've actually done, a karma that we've done. Hey, Tsapa Dikson.
what the she be lazy to what is some she be lin sheba dan sabi chebanes the ni lazy she sa ga she be le sa yung yin jiro she be le sambo san ne jang le dan ga ge gun la o su le nga ge le jan na pin di zamar ba ta what the je ta sabi le dro sabi le ne le lan chubo matuba te ndata te sa wate le lan chubo te wate le lan chubo ta kante diba sagurma le yanga insa yanga diba chubo insa mare sabi le te ze saba se ta kante su chu gu san ju ne san tamba ina sabi le mare ba mgo chu she gu nya san lu ju ne san tamba ina mgo chu saba su chu gu san ju ne san tamba ina sabi le su ma ju na ko sabi le pa na ko man ju gu san ju ne san ko ma ku na the Sabilis.
Lesso.
Sabili.
Ale mago. Mashu. Okay. Selbudu.
What the things are it. Or the Sabil Sabile, Lelan Chubomatu, but the Chubate Daihon in Deba Chuchun is it.
So when we look at karma that is not that you have accumulated, we can find there are various categories, but that one hasn't done. So if we look at karma that is accumulated that hasn't been done, we can find the examples when we look at the three non-virtues of the body and four non-virtues of the mind. If we think about for a very long time the actual killing, the act of killing, but then we don't commit the act, we've accumulated this karma, but we haven't done it. So when it comes to stealing, or it comes to sexual misconduct, or lying, divisive speech, harsh words, or gossip, when we think about these things for an extended period of time, but we don't do them, then we say this is karma that's accumulated but not been done. So that's how we would make this distinction in that case. So Rinpoche, just as an aside, mentioned this, and then we'll get into the body of the text. Ngay de lo mason.
Sa Saba said, or the Conte, and the Suchu San Duja in Samarbe, Suchu and Duba. Suchu Gusan, Junim San Lioba, San Duja, Dibach, Suchu, Junim San Donna, Dibach, Saba. Deba Magoju, Sheguin, San Junim Sabaina, or the Sabilis, Deba Chivaris.
So when we look at the misdeed of killing, which is a very great misdeed, it becomes a very negative when we have this desire to kill, and then we think about it repeatedly, and we nourish this idea to kill. By doing so, it becomes a great level of negativity that is accumulated. So this thinking over a long period of time, over and over again, becomes a very negative karma. And in here, in this section, we are going to find out deeds which are done but are lighter because of a factor. So that's what we're going to get into next. Okay.
Tasa bilene nabajubu matubate datades
Lesso.
Ne Maladu Shibatans Tapana Tseji and Maladu Nilatando Suju and Nilata Yore Mazambashu and Nilata Maladu Suju Nilata by Deba Chibuka Marwa.
Lesso.
Deba Chibuka Marwa. What the Sabile Maide and Deba Joma in Bezer was an Adisama. What the Sabile Maide Sabilina Dibares.
Lesso.
Diba Chibu insert.
Lesso.
Jugu Sabi insert. What the Tamalon to Shebatan Masheba and the Dibasa. What the Tuknakajin Diba Chungu is a marbe. What the Sabile Mares Masheba Sabile Mare Sajid Mebat Sajid Mebat nutrition. What the Sabile Mares Trapper me last Kulu Trapper member. Junchas member Tansan Tezje and Tapa Majiba ina Debachabi in Samaro. Neshebatan, Noah Sheba no Treje, Jeba Jane Sheba, and Mendu Jin Sheba, and Mendu Jin the Debajeba Sheju ina with Debachu in Zaro. Rajiji Lumatesena. Dumas in Nakala Tabala over the Sere Tabatus Raji Lomate in Lagre Lomate Raji Lomate Segadua Raji Lomate Segad Dumas in Nakatu Sere, Dumas in Naka Tabaro Taba in Raji Lomate himself and Dure.
Okay.
Raji Lomate Danza Goata Mago Lomate Moni Lomate Gawa de la Colongi Gawa, Sonde Gawa, and what the Tampi Gawa, one year Gawa, then the Gawa Mojatan and Lomate Laja, Magawa Laja, Lomate Raji Lomate Beje Taba to Sure Raji Lomat Temba Tansa Jebe Sewaya, Deba Jesa Sunaya, Jeba Jebaina, Deba Chujo in Saro.
Less so.
Nebe Sawatan, Nebe Yobaina, Tony to be Shera, the Maduba Gumbata, Shama Gumbata, Yobaina, what the Deba Chujo and Zero Sawate, Lela Chubanda Matubi, Lekai Baote, Chubat Kano Matubi, Lekai Bate, Sabileres, Kazonga to Jungun Joson Laro, Jungun Joson Sama good Mogamo, Taka the Sabiles again the Deba Mogo, Jun Rimbo, Shego Santan, the Saba is Saba. Jungun Joson Sans at the Shesa Nigas on Kadul. Sabile Takante, Mago Juro, Mago Jute, Junimbo, Mago Jush, when your son in the Sab is Deba Chiburis. Magajumu Chuti, Fung goes on Junimus on Tabaina, Goshi Jabin what they inserted.
Karma that you have accumulated, is that not included among the following types of actions? So accumulated karma is heavy, is the greatest negativity. So once it's accumulated, we find that then it's the greatest negative. So these are examples of actions that don't categorically fall under that which is accumulated, under that heavy category. Actions done in dreams. So things that are done in dreams aren't actually being done, therefore they don't fall categorically under this. So if we in a dream engage in killing, or in a dream we engage in sexual misconduct, then in this case this doesn't become an accumulated karma. Those done unknowingly, so if we didn't know we did something. Those done unconsciously, so if we did so while we weren't conscious. Those done without intensity or not continuously, so not doing this with a great amount of intensity related to wanting to, and not continuously, meaning something that's not done all the time or done over and over again. Those done in error, those done forgetfully, those done without wanting to, those ethically neutral. Rinpoche is saying that here this is referring to permanent phenomena, to those ethically neutral. So for instance, uncompounded space is an example of something that would categorically fall under that which is permanent, that which is ethically neutral. So those eradicated through regret. So if one has a regret for having done the negativity, then this regret compromises the potency of the non-virtue. It makes it less, makes it lighter. And then those eradicated with a remedy. So if one applies an antidote or a remedy to the negativity, then it decreases its potency as well. So it says karma that you have accumulated is the remaining actions, the ones included in these 10 types of actions. Karma that you have not accumulated is just the 10 types of actions accumulated above. So here, karma that's been accumulated are those 10 non-virtuous actions, which then don't have the presence of these qualifications that make it not accumulated. Then if there is this any among those 10 done without the presence of these 10 variables, then it's necessarily a karma that's accumulated in the greatest level of negativity. But if we look at the same true with virtue, so if we look at non-virtue, if we engage in killing, for instance, if we think about it for a long time and then engage in the killing, then this thinking for a long period of time makes it into an accumulated action, in the same way that if we think about it for a long time and then engage in sexual misconduct, stealing, divisive speech, harsh words, gossip, or lying, that if we think about it for a long time and then engage in that task then it becomes a karma that is accumulated and becomes in the category of the most negative. And the same is true for virtue, though. If we engage in the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and we do so by first thinking about the abandonment of these non-virtues and so forth for a period of time, then this also creates a great amount of virtue that is accumulated. So the same is true for virtue as is for non-virtue, that if there is this pre-step, which is engaging in consciously thinking of it, then it increases the virtue or the non-virtue to the point where it's considered an accumulated action.
Yungon ju sabi le na le yungon ju changwa yu je de sabi le ne yungon ju sang cha zo mar wa su ju gu sang ju je me san da na su ju ma sabar sab a ju de su ju gu sang ne sang ju de me san da de na sabar a sabar he ne ju ngo je de ju mu sabi le na yungon ju sang ma cha 사벨에 있는 종은 좀 마상에 맞아 상화요래 마상화요에서 구사르다 가정 가서데 종은 조선 상세한테 세상이가 상례들에자 바수취제제
Say Chenmo.
다간데 대해서 먹어 주 디바 먹어 주 사고년 주님을 상담나 사바도 대해서 디바 집에 있어야 수주 구여선에 수 맞죠 봐이나 수주 구여선 주로 산다나 디바치고 인사로 뭐그 좀 수든 수 구여선 주로 산다나 어때 거기다 집에 인사 말베데 그 가도인데 도스레드로 어디 인사.
So in Basuchuji Jetsons we find that what qualifies these is that it gives rise to the 3 types of results. So we have the results of this life, next life, and many ways. Lesso.
Only Sabo que tu that Garasina, Magojo, Sago, Junior Masaltama, Sabo.
Lesso.
Magojo, Chudin Song goes on Junior Masaltama, Gojo Sabo.
Sapa. Lesso. Joy Jusum the Yene the Basuchuji Jetson.
Basuchuji Sheba the Saba. Sheba Saba Nika Imba. Sheba the Saba Nika Imba the Jungon Josum the Hotel Jaja.
Lesso. Okay. So then when we look at how actions become accumulated, when we look in the case of non-virtuous actions, if we even if we don't engage in the action itself, but we think about it for a very, very long time, then we actually can accumulate it without having done it. So we can find the case where if we think about it for a long time, there is accumulation there, even though there isn't completion. And with accumulation, we know that this is the greatest level of non-virtue. So if we have this pre-thinking, then it becomes the greatest level of non-virtue. So then if we look at the case where what is something that is both an accumulated action and an action that it's done, we'll say that it's actions that give rise to any of the 3 types of results that were previously stated. So we find in Basuchuji Jetson's commentary that he states that if we look for something which is both, it is that which gives rise to those 3 types of results. And Rinpoche said we'll get into more of this as we go on. But if we look in the case of non-virtuous activity, if we think about any among those 10 non-virtues for a long period of time, it becomes a great level of non-virtue that is accumulated. But then the same is true for virtue. If we think about the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities for a very long time, then this creates an accumulated, even though we don't actually engage in the ethics which abandons them, if we think about it for a long time, then it creates a great amount of virtue as well, of accumulated virtue, even though there isn't an actual karma that's done. That's it. Digsun.
Malan Chevala so Chuba de Debach Mares,
Less so.
Chubukaru Maimbi, and Deba Mogo Saguin, Judy Masan down to Deba Juro. What the Sabas do there is
Jupo Karo Mayimbi. Okay.
Chubukaru Maimbi Logro, Chubukaru Maimbi,
Less so.
Chubutadal Jembi, Legaima Osrota. Judy Masan down to Lederes. Gile in a day, Megile in a day, Maguju to the Sungu of Judy Masan down there, Gile is Abbot Angel. Mago to Santa Mago Sabbath Angel.
So here, when we look at the 10 types of action, which something, if it's included within, is necessarily not an accumulated action, we find this first actions done in dreams. So that's the first example of those 10. So if there is an action that is done, that is thought about, that is thought about for a period of time, and it doesn't have any of the characteristics that are presented in these 10, then it is necessarily an accumulated action or accumulated karma. So if it's in a category of action and it's been thought about for a while and it doesn't include any of these, then it's accumulated action. So when we look at something that a karma that is not accumulated, here is an example: an action done in a dream. So why is this the case? That it's not accumulated? Because the mind, actions done in the dreams aren't stable, because the mind at that point in time isn't stable. It's in a dream state. So therefore it's not a great amount of non-virtue, because the mind is not stable at that point in time. So here we have 3 categories. We have karma that is done, karma that is accumulated, and then karma that is not accumulated. So if we look at what karma that one has done, if we look at the definition of karma that is done, we find an action that you have thought about or that you have consciously set in motion, either physically or vocally. So here, this is an action that one has set in motion, and then we have all the different divisions of actions. So then
and the junior Magojo Saguina, Junior was Sanlo, what the Sabi ladies. Junior Mugu Chudin Sangu, Sunguin and Sanlo Baina, Gawaju Sabi ladies, what things are.
So accumulated karma is an action that's done with a large amount of thinking. So any of the 10 non-virtuous activities that are done with thinking about them for a great deal becomes a karma that is accumulated. So actions done in dreams would be something that's not accumulated because it categorically doesn't fit that. So this is when we engage in a virtue. So when we think about any among the 10 ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities for an extended period of time, then this becomes a karma that is accumulated, that is virtuous. So we see this length of time that one has a relationship with thinking about it, with this pre-planning that makes it an accumulated karma.
Macha. Macha shows na, and then Lujugun Suju Majibella Euro. Suju, Juniper Santa Matabaina, the Shebile.
So
sabile mai.
if we were to say, can you posit an example of karma that is done but that is not accumulated, we would posit the example of a killing or a stealing that is done but has not been thought about for a period of time, that has not been thought about over a long period. There's not this premeditation. So something that's been done, but there isn't this premeditation to make it an accumulation. So when we're looking at what show an example of that, we would give that example as that which is done but not accumulated. Digson.
Ta nga go ne ju chama chi ju nga chi shu marba. De ma go sa ne ju chama chi ju nga ji ma. Ju re ma san ma ta ba ina she bi le yin sa bi le mai.
So then when we look at the non-virtues of the speech, of lying, harsh words, divisive speech, and gossip, if we engage in any of those actions without having this, without this premeditation, without thinking about them for a period of time, and we just do them, then this becomes karma that is done by the speech, but not accumulated.
Ta sheba da saba ni ga le jo na le ju gu ne su ji ba ma ji ba le ba ma sa ba nga gu ne ju chama chi zu nga chi je de di ba sa gu ne ju ne san ta ne le ji le na ba su nga ga na ba je de she bi le de sa bi ni ga yin.
So then if we look at something which is both accumulated karma and karma that you have done, we would say that any of the non-virtues of the body of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, and any of the non-virtues of the speech of lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and gossip that are done and thought about for a long period of time, or done with premeditation. So any among those examples that are done with premeditation are examples of karma that is done and accumulated karma. So this is something, an example, which is both, or a common locus.
Show?
The show Sena? Sumachu. Okay. Lessa. Lessa. Okay. So then when we want to say what is an example of a karma that is accumulated but not done, we would say the example of any of the non-virtues of the body or speech that are thought about for a long period of time or duration of time, but then not actually executed. So these would be examples of karma that is accumulated but not done. So we have examples. So Rinpoche went through the 4 possibilities, 3 possibilities. This is what this is relating to. So here we find there are 4 possibilities. So if it is a karma that you have done, it is not necessarily an accumulated karma. So we've just, Rinpoche gave the case of one that's not thought about, an action that's not thought about over a period of time. It's been done, but it's not accumulated. If it is karma that is accumulated, it is not necessarily karma that you have done. So Rinpoche just gave the example of where you think about it for a long time, but you don't actually engage, you don't execute any among those 7 of the body. So why then isn't it karma? Why is it karma that you've accumulated, but not karma that you've done? It's not karma that you've done because it's not an action that you have thought, that you have consciously set in motion physically or vocally. So that qualification's not there. You haven't actually killed or stolen. You haven't any of the 3 non-virtues of the body haven't actually taken place, or 4 non-virtues of the mind haven't actually taken place. And then Rinpoche said there's something which is both, and that's a non-virtue, whether there are 3 of the body or 4 of the mind, that's been thought about for a long time, and then actively engaged in. This would be something which is both a karma that you have done, or an action that you have done, and an action that you've accumulated. Then the Nika Mayambi.
That Nika Mayambi Josana, Masabi Lene, Naba Jubachiki Tamanito, Masabi Lejutjantino, Masabi Lejut Sabile Maire, Shebile Ai, Te Injimarwa.
Shebile Mainde?
Shebile Mainde, Lungakle Maimbe.
Okay.
Junole Lungale Maimba.
So then, if something which is neither would be a non-accumulated karma. An example of a non-accumulated karma, so something done in a dream, for instance. Something done in a dream is not a karma that you've done because you haven't consciously set it in motion physically or vocally in a dream. You haven't actually done that. And then it is not accumulated karma because it's in the category of what makes it not accumulated, which then we would say that is something which is neither accumulated or karma that you've done, a non-accumulated karma. And then specifically a non-accumulated karma that hasn't been done. Because as a note, there's a non-accumulated karma that's been done, obviously. So this is an example of a non-accumulated karma that has not been done. So that's the four possibilities. This is a way some people really understand it. If there is A, there's not necessarily B. If there's B, there's not necessarily A. There's something which is both A and B, and then there's something which is neither A nor B. So that's the way to explain the four possibilities in another way. So then we could even make an easy example for something which is neither and say a rabbit with horns. So then you could say so show something which is neither accumulated karma nor karma that you have done, and you would say a rabbit with horns. Oh, a rabbit with horns is not karma that you've done? No, it's not karma that you've done because it's not an action set in motion physically or verbally. The subject rabbit with horns is not a karma accumulated? No, it's not a karma accumulated because it's not an action. It's not an activity. So it's good to give a little bit of a teaching on debate or on dialectics, because then you can practice. So in this, we have these presentations, and without really using debate to analyze this, you really can't pull the meaning out of it. So this book is very potent, or this book has a lot of importance or great information, because we find within it all of the teachings of the Vinaya. We find within it the perfection of wisdom teachings. We find within it the Madhyamaka teachings. We find within it the Abhidharma teachings, and so forth. We find within it the teachings on the commentary on the compendium of vowed cognition. So the Pramanavartika, the Prajnaparamita, the Madhyamika, all of these are found within this text. So then it says, karma that you have not accumulated is just the 10 types of actions accumulated above. So then it qualifies what a not accumulated karma is. And now we're going to get into Asangha's compendium of determinations, where we'll find the presentation of those four possibilities, or those four permutations. So we're going to go through this, and this will expand it, what we've gone over, even more. Oh yeah.
Doa sadanga donani sadanga donani nane what the doa jire doa yang majishi desa sabato to simbare ta suje shela masaba ne suje shela masabas suje bileshe masaba suje shela masaba ne sa mekebi shebata malana shebata chedu maje batan mendo jindu jenji nedendo shedu jubatan leji kona shejin tenejan jubatan nyemi ji senta be june Ponyu Dombalane, Shinto Sama Shebatan, Nami Jebara, Jidembi Chadaji, Sabinyam Hebatan, Jidel Debi, Tonaji, Sabinyam Taba, Jumba Sheba was what the Zuka late Zukangalot and the Shiela Casa Marba.
The Jikten La Tepi, the Gom, the Samten Sumba, the Jikten La Tepi.
Takatendere, Tangazo, the Shato Kondo to say Marba, the Shak Kondo to Sole, and Niebotele, Jitem Niebotan, Jitem Debi Niebni.
Okay.
The Shak Niebotan Maduba Gomar, Maduba Gone, things the Gonsona, Jitem Milan, Setum Lesona, the Shal Te Nuno.
Okay.
The Shato Pontumata.
Okay.
That Chuna Dabamaru, Zotumba, Tumaji Zozo, Zulu Tumaji Jemai, Tendi Himiju Senje, Dabamaru, Shesona, what the chat Sabon Coronel, Tuning also to Tola, Gola, what to Ginebishine, the chat Tawan Tene, Pombi Jajumatu Marbe, what the Jitan Debilang, what the
Tonlan, Dangonlan, Jikten La Tepi.
Jitan Debilang,
Okay.
Sujulan. Jitem Bilan, Solange, Sujilan, Jitel Debilan, Papa.
Okay. The Ducha dan Contro Niepo, the Ducha Niepo Meduba Gom, the Jikten.
The Chab Madugon, Jitem,
Okay.
Tony Madu Kazak Juji Euro, the Jitem Shirubala, Nobel.
Okay.
What the thing is Euro. What the shall take no. So you know too. So no, Jitem Debilang, Tonola.
Then Solan, Tony Gonjana, then the Jikten Bilan. Gangisena the Tony Dopi Sheriff Yo Maribe.
The sheriff didn't know the Jitem Debilang,
Okay. So now we'll get into this. The Compendium of Determination presents 4 permutations between karma done and karma accumulated. Killing, that is karma which you have done but not accumulated, is seen in the following case. That done unknowingly, that done in a dream, that not done intentionally, that which another person forced you to do against your will, that done only once and then regretted, that much lessened upon assuming a vow to give up killing after overcoming the desire to kill by means of a deep understanding of its faults. That whose seed you weaken before its fruition can start by means of separating from worldly attachment, and that whose seed you have actually destroyed with a super mundane path of elimination. So we have worldly paths and out of worldly paths or unworldly paths that are being presented here. So when we look at this first example of the killing which is done but not accumulated, we find these qualifications. And when we get to the part where it speaks of this separation, this separation begins to take place when we engage first in these worldly paths. So when we look at worldly paths, those are paths which are non-superior paths. So for instance, when we look at the negativities such as attachment, or we look at the negativity of hatred, we can apply an antidote or a worldly path to that, which is, for instance, meditating upon ugliness or impurity. This becomes an antidote to attachment. Now, this will have the ability to lessen that attachment. So, so it will have that. And the reason it's also called worldly is because it is something that we share with non-Buddhists as well. So we have the ability to achieve these kind of meditations, such as the awareness of the impurity, we have the ability to achieve the state of single-pointed concentration related to these topics. So these would be practices that one could do on the non-superior paths, so such as the path of accumulation and then the path of preparation. But when we get to the path of meditation and path of no more learning, then these become super mundane paths. They become superior paths or Arya paths. And then these become the true, these are able to truly separate us from our cyclic existence, because of the fact that it is our grasping at true establishment that is the root of cyclic existence. So when we look at the supermundane path, we're looking at realizing, having a direct perception of emptiness as presented in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. So it says here, form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. So by relying upon dependent origination, we are able to get rid of what the root of all these negativities really are. And then these supermundane paths begin when we achieve a direct realization of that reality. So this is what the so it says here, by means of so it begins with worldly, the separating from worldly attachment. So here this is speaking of those worldly paths, and then the supermundane path, which is unworldly, or otherworld, could be translated as, or not, yes, otherworldly, would be those Arya paths, those superior paths. Ngay sampa kanga las.
Doate ulma trubna jidu ngatu kale shi na kale kap modus.
Ya jusirna?
Doal majisa jidu. Odete lari jeda yo marda.
Ni yo mari. Ngay kanga las.
Lari jeda.
Kai tonsa.
Odete gutu jagu.
So when we go through this, and it's only in this great treatise where you find this debate that takes place with the four possibilities. When you go look at some of the other Lamrim commentaries, they leave it alone. They don't really get into this part and these points that are made. So we find that it's just kind of put down from there. So we find this presentation that if we look at it, we'll be able to understand the meaning, and we'll understand this, but we don't find any of these other commentaries where they can present it. So Rinpoche is saying, look at how wonderful this information is. So if we go slowly with the guidance of Jayan Sheba's outline, then it'll make it not difficult for us. Jayan Sheba writes so difficult. He writes very difficult, very thorough, very condensed. Or he's saying trapodu, which is difficult, but the meaning is it's very. So all of the importance is there. So if we slowly read it, then we'll find that it's really not that hard to understand. Karma's ni. So we have a couple of minutes left, literally 3. Does anyone have any question, or we can do the dedication?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so dedication?
Yeah.
Sapile Yena. So concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. Whatever dedication is praised as supreme, the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. Powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Yatso, stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wanda, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rimchi Gutsi Shabi Denrala, Lamrim Chenmo Kanga Trirama.